Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront updates and a very exciting video. Earlier this week I had the opportunity to record some Bespin gameplay over in Los Angeles, which I'm now allowed to reveal. In this video I wanted to show you every new blaster and star card that is available in the Bespin DLC and explain exactly how they work. So without any further ado, let's start off with the two new blasters. First off, we have the EE4, which is my personal new favorite blaster, and I performed very well with it when I played at the event. Just as its predecessor, the EE3, it fires a burst of blaster bolts, but the EE4 has a higher rate of fire but more of a spread. The actual bolts fire pretty much simultaneously, making it feel almost like a shotgun. As you might imagine, it works very well at short range, but not that good at longer ranges like the EE3. So for close quarters maps I would recommend the EE4, but the EE3 is still better on more open maps. I think the EE4 is actually able to one-shot an enemy if you're standing close to them and manage to land the whole burst. This is also why I like this weapon so much, because it can be almost as effective as the CA87 at short range, but it's also able to perform good on medium ranges, which makes it a bit more versatile. The second blaster added in the Bespin DLC, which is also the one Lando uses, is the X8 Night Sniper. Despite the name, it's not actually a sniper rifle but a blaster pistol. Some of you might have seen Lando use it in the Rebel series as well. The Night Sniper is a fairly long-range blaster pistol which is equipped with a thermal vision scope, something which is completely new to the game, and this allows you to spot enemies a lot easier when you're aiming down the sight. After using the X8 Night Sniper for a while, I didn't really think it performed too well. At longer ranges it was pretty easy to see and hit enemies, but it felt like it did too little damage to actually be any good compared to other weapons. And at short range it worked decently, but I just felt like I might as well have used the EE4 in those situations. One problem is that the Bespin maps are already very bright, so you don't really get a lot from your scope, and at some points it actually felt like the scope made it harder to see the enemies instead. But as Dennis said at the event, this weapon was aimed to counter those rebels or shadow troopers on Endor that can be really hard to see, and it will obviously also work a lot better on night maps in general. So even if it was added in the Bespin DLC, those maps might not be ideal to use it on. Now let's move over to the new star cards. First off, we have the only charge card added in the DLC, Disruption. This card proved to be extremely powerful, and what it does is that it sends out a wave around the player and anyone caught in it gets their weapon overheated. It doesn't just get overheated like normally, but it also gets stuck on the top position for about 1 second, meaning that you can't instantly reset your weapon with the cooling flush. What makes this so good is that people aren't really prepared for it, and if you're in a battle that you feel like you're losing, all you have to do is to pop this card and there's no way they will win that fight unless your weapon gets overheated as well or your aim is very bad. I found that it saved me in a lot of situations, and I also knew that if I would be facing off with more than one enemy, I could pop that card and disable them both and therefore kill at least one of them before the other one could even shoot back. The first normal star card added is the Scout Binoculars. This star card looks fairly similar to the Orbital Strike, but the way it works is that when you zoom in with the binoculars, any enemies that are in your line of sight will after a brief second get a red dot on them, and if you press activate, they will get marked. What this marking does is that it gives the same effect as the droid power-up and allows your whole team to see them through walls. The difference is that this one lasts a lot longer than the droid pulse, and it of course has a longer range as well. If an enemy that you have marked dies, you will get bonus points for it. This is a pure teamwork star card, and I hope this will mean that more people will play supportive on the battlefield and help out their teammates. I found it quite hard to use on the maps in the Bespin DLC because they aren't that open and long range, and I often died trying to mark people. This card will probably be a lot more helpful on larger open maps such as Tatooine or Hoth. Next up we have the Shock Grenade. This is a grenade that renders all enemies it hits immobile, and it's therefore a very good crowd control tool. The interesting part is that if you get hit by one of these, you need to spam the R key or the respective button on the consoles in order to break loose from this lock. It's pretty easy to break out from, so most people don't stay in place for more than 2 or 3 seconds, but that is still a lot of time in a battle. You may be thinking that the Thermal Detonator is a lot better, but the thing is that the Thermal Detonator will only kill if you hit all the enemies very closely, which doesn't happen that often if there's multiple enemies, whereas the Shock Grenade will lock down everyone equally as long as they are in the hit radius. One thing to note though is that you shouldn't overestimate its shock time, because at some points I threw it out of a doorway and got a pop-up saying that I shocked someone, but by the time I got out there myself, the enemy was already loose from the grenade and ready to kill me. Lastly, you need to keep in mind that this grenade does work on yourself, so you need to be careful with where you throw it, and you can't throw it at your feet to lock down nearby enemies, because you will lock down yourself as well. Lastly, we have a star card that I think most of you have already heard about, the Ion Neutralizer. This star card is not included in the actual Bespin DLC, but is coming to free to everyone. As the name suggests, this star card allows you to completely immobilize a vehicle for a couple of seconds. Keep in mind that it doesn't work on the AT-ATs though. The star card has a very similar charge up as the Ion Disruptor, and the projectile fires at about the same speed as well. So as you can imagine, it's a bit tricky to hit a moving target with it. I haven't gotten any footage of how it looks when you actually get hit by it, but as you can see in this clip, the AT-ST gets completely immobilized for a couple of seconds before it moves on, and it also works for taking out shields. I had a very limited time with this card, but I honestly felt like it was pretty bad. First of all, it's a bit tricky to hit with, just as with the Ion Disruptor, and secondly, it only seems to disable the vehicle for around 4 to 5 seconds, which to be honest is quite short. I simply don't see the point in using the neutralizer over something like the Ion Grenade or Ion Torpedo, as that will do a lot more harm to the enemy vehicles. I can imagine that it will be good at some points, like when the AT-STs are storming straight into a crowd, but in most cases I don't really see it being too useful, unless they decide to up the immobilize timer a little bit. But well, that is all the new weapons, star cards and traits coming in the Bespin DLC. Let me know which ones you're most excited to try out, and don't forget to check out the other videos I've made showing off the new heroes, maps, gameplay changes and more. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, may the force be with you.